Hey guys, with another one-take review, and today I want to talk about Two Lone Swordsmen's Stay Down. Stay Down as an album was probably the first IDM album that I ever listened to. Initially, the genre's name just kind of pushed me away from it. The name intelligent dance music is not only one of the most pretentious, overly pretentious names I've ever heard a genre of music be given, but anything be given ever. So I just decided not to check it out for a very long time, but Stay Down intrigued me with its cool album cover and its, supposedly aquatic themes that a lot of people talk about when discussing the record, and I decided to check it out one day, and I'm very glad that I did when I did. A major selling point for Stay Down as an album, as well as Two Lone Swordsmen's catalog as a whole, in fact, is the interesting atmosphere that's built here, as well as the potential story that it tells, or doesn't tell for that matter. As you can see by the album cover here, you've got a cover that is two scuba divers seemingly breaking into a sunken or abandoned ship of some sort, and while this obviously is an album that directly is nothing of a story, it's totally instrumental, it's again an electronic album, there's no vocals to be found here, one wouldn't be totally wrong in taking this as a soundtrack to something like exploring an abandoned sunken ship. The song Hope We Never Surface opens up the album with a very curious and suspenseful tone. Later on the album, songs like Light the Last Flare and As Worldly Pleasures Wave Goodbye instill a sense of melancholy in the listener and the album's overall arcing narrative that I think almost does make some sort of a story to some extent. Again, there's really, no story to be told here, but at the same time, it does feel like there is maybe some sort of story that you can create almost. It's a very ambiguous record, which is one of the major appeals of it in my eyes. I suppose what I'm trying to say is if there's ever an example of an album cover really defining a record, it is Stay Down by the Two Lone Swordsmen. Of course, Two Lone Swordsmen's work here isn't totally aquatic exclusively within atmosphere or themes. Musically it is as well, thanks to certain production techniques that give things a slightly muffled at times, but purposefully muffled, I should say, kind of feel that makes things feel very underwater, and in a good way, in my opinion. As I stated before, this is a defining aspect of Stay Down as a listening experience, as many other albums have attempted over time to create this kind of atmosphere, but in my personal opinion at least, very few do it as well as this one. What I find most interesting, though, is that Stay Down isn't totally controlled by this desire for an aquatic sound. This also slightly relates to the whole this has a story, but also it doesn't have a story kind of aspect of the record as well. There is a sense of aquaticism here that's, again, heavily defined by certain production techniques and styles used on songs like Alpha School, but at the same time, there are moments where there's just none. It's just straight up IDM. But it ends up being affected by those more aquatic moments to the point that the entire record, when listened to from front to back, is aquatic in its own nature, and I feel like that makes it so that it's easy to cherry pick certain songs that you really like off of this album if you don't want this sort of overarching musical theme. But at the same time, it also makes it a fantastic experience to listen to from front to back, as if it's its own little journey through this, again, sunken ship kind of adventure. A lot of the songs on Stay Down are actually shockingly catchy as well. I especially like the record's more experimental moments, to be certain. I especially like those moments as they are very minimalistic, and while I personally have a love for minimalistic electronic music, and it's pulled off very well here, in my opinion. Elsewhere, you have minor details, sort of like string sections that are very subtle, maybe sort of clapping and clicking noises, metal scraping noises, that all really end up defining Stay Down as an album in these very subtle and nuanced ways that give it its own identity while still having it manage to stack up and match up with other entries within the entire IDM genre. I suppose what I'm trying to say is that a lot of these smaller and, at times, depending on how casually you're listening to the record, unnoticeable details are what makes Stay Down such a noteworthy record that is easily a standout within a genre with a lot of standout albums, but at the same time, it also makes it something that's easily accessible if you're new to the genre. That's another reason that I'm glad this was my first full-length IDM experience. It wasn't Aphex Twin or anything like that, it was Two Lone Swordsmen. It's very easy to get into, but there's still a level of experimentation here that makes it very easy to appreciate if you are a big fan of electronic music or you're very interested in learning more about this side of music geekdom. I also do want to say that technically not all of this album is IDM, as there are a lot of songs here that are more upbeat and more properly danceable that, while still, I guess, technically within the realm of experimental electronic music, take more influence from stuff like down-tempo music as well as dub music of all things as well. Just one look at a song like Ink Cloud will show you what I'm talking about, as it's a very repetitive but upbeat and bouncy song that, while many people may not initially like, I didn't even really initially like due to the fact that they are extremely repetitive with very little change-up, is actually very endearing as a song. This whole area of the record overall is very endearing because there's almost a sense of hypnotism to it almost. It's very interesting, it's very intriguing, and it keeps you engaged, even with, again, that slight sense of repetitiveness. In conclusion, I do think that Stay Down as an effort is one of the very few albums that I've personally heard that manages to actually attempt to be aqueous in theme and properly succeed. After listening to this record, I finally decided to just man up and actually get past the pretentious name of intelligent dance music and check out IDM a bit more as a genre, while also not actually telling the uninitiated what IDM stands for, because I refuse to tell people I listen to intelligent dance music. But nonetheless, my point still stands. I'm glad that I did after listening to this record, because I have found a lot of very personal gems within the realm of IDM and other more minimalistic experimental electronic music. Nonetheless, I digress. To Lone Swordsmen's work on Stay Down is still one of the most interesting and obsession-worthy IDM albums out there, in my personal opinion, and perhaps I'm just saying that with an extra level of appreciation from it, being sort of my first stepping stone into this world of music that I was unfamiliar with a couple of years ago now. But still, 4 stars out of 5 is what I'm going to give this record. I think it's a great 4-star album. Again, there are problems here, but nonetheless, I still think it's something that's worth your time, and it's definitely an interesting album if you approach it from a sort of story-esque sense, in my personal opinion at least. So yeah, 4 stars out of 5, and with that being said, that's the end of this review, and I'll see you guys in the next one.